Welcome to the Grit and Grow podcast, where we talk to guests who are pursuing excellence in both sport and life, who encourage and motivate us to become better mentors, coaches, parents, and athletes. My name is Shane Sowden, head men's basketball coach at Briarcrest College, and also your co-host.
And my name is Justin Simpkins, co-host and director of Prairie Hockey Academy. Shane, today's episode was a bit of a throwback for me. I know Jamie Gilbert, today's guest, from about 10 years ago when I actually hired him as a personal mentor for me, and he was influential in my life. And so having him on today's podcast meant a lot to me. This is a special episode because I just got to revisit a lot of stuff that I learned from him, and then just to see what's been going on in his life the last 10 years and the wisdom that he's gained. And he shared a lot of it with us. This whole idea of situation crafting for me as a coach was one that I'm going to take away from this episode, including, again, just his message on compete and don't compare, as he broke that down all the way back down to like the actual core, of what that word compete is and what it means.
Yeah, Justin, for me, you obviously had a deeper relationship with Jamie, but I knew him, we connected a few times, but he was also a mentor to me through his writings. Was part of writing a number of books that deeply impacted my coaching journey. And this is one of those episodes to listen closely to all the information Jamie's sharing with us, just building teams and where's your identity coming from, and just his life experiences of, walking through plateaus in life and the process of becoming great. Just so many great nuggets. And again, kind of love going down memory lane a little bit and getting to know him better. And he just shared some unbelievable truths for athletes, parents, and coaches.
Yes, I think people are going to enjoy today's episode as we welcome Jamie Gilbert all the way from Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Jamie, welcome to the Grit and Growth podcast. I'm thrilled to have you here, and we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. And maybe I'm going to hit you with something real quick that I want you to really just start with talking to our listeners about. And a long time ago, you had a quote, just really talking about, I think, just God's call in our life. And you said, God wants to get you where he wants you to go more than you want to get where more than you want to get where he wants you to go. I don't know if you remember saying that. I think you wrote it in one of your books. And I just want to know, tell us, what do you mean by that? And how can you encourage our listeners with that?
Okay. So I do remember that. It's not an original. That actually came from Mark Patterson.
Okay.
I don't know if it's from In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day or The Wild Goose Chase, but one of those books. And that for me, it was kind of a big shift in my life where I almost was working at trying to do stuff specifically with soccer, trying to be a professional soccer player. And I always felt like I was running this uphill battle kind of by myself, and almost like God was giving me the push from behind, or, helping me. He was supplemental to the whole thing. Instead of kind of seeing him as a father or a shepherd, rather, that's kind of leading the way, paving the way for you and giving you everything you need to get there. And that was a big shift for me. It really helped me understand how big God was and is. And I think the more that I've understood how big and timeless God is, and as I've started to study the scope of human history, how small we are, and but how faithful he is to care for his people, made a massive difference for me. Instead of trying to figure out, it was more about just following him, and having a little bit more dependence there. A mentor of mine a couple of years ago, he said, we're all like boats on the sea. He had said, I'm very much like a speedboat, trying to get where I want to go, or where I think God's calling me as fast as I can, instead of just setting the sails and letting God lead me by his spirit. And so that's kind of what I was getting at with it. And I think for me, it became not focusing so much on a destination and just crossing that finish line, but actually just immersing yourself in the process, in the moment with people, and serving where you are.
That's perfect, because process over goals, I know, is something that you've talked about in the past. Going back into some of your history and some of the companies, the mental training and that you started, one of the books you wrote, Burn Your Goals. So focusing on the process over the goals, maybe unpack that as well.
For me, it was when I was a kid. Once I started falling in love with soccer at the age of 10, um, I knew I wanted to be a professional soccer player. I didn't know that there was anything else I could do with soccer. Um, and all the people that I looked up to had professional soccer as like the highest goal. So I knew that's where I wanted to be. I knew there was kind of a process to it of playing for your youth national team and going to a top Division 1 college, winning a national championship, going overseas, World Cup, Premier League. That was kind of all spoken or maybe unspoken, but it was solidified in my mind that that is success, and that's where I was trying to go. Um, I remember a period in my life where I transferred from Vanderbilt University in my junior year of college to University of Memphis. It's when I really started following Jesus and had a radical transformation in my life. And I remember one day in the shower after a game, just the it was such a simple thought, but it was so immense that um, God can do absolutely anything. He could get me to Europe in a phone call, and I'd probably thought that before, but it was like really understanding that, and that it's a real reality that he's done stuff like that before. And that for me was kind of a release to just start enjoying the process. So by that, I mean, enjoy the people that you get to play with. Um, really dig into the minutia and the details of your sport. For me, it was soccer and how professionals train, how they train different aspects of their game. And that for me was pretty easy because I really loved training. I actually enjoyed training more than I loved games. I really loved working on a piece of my game and beating on it and learning what not to do, what to do, how to make minor adjustments. Um, and when I started focusing a little bit more on step by step trying to get better, I started to see that there were better results. And I never got to a place, playing for the U.S. national team or playing for a big Premier League club. But as I went along in the journey, I started to enjoy the people that I was around a whole lot more. I started to care about them a lot more, which, as a teammate, that helps you be a much better teammate. And so soccer became more enjoyable. It became less about the results. And I didn't know, and this is probably something I'd love to pass on to kids. I was always told that winners hate to lose and that they hate to lose more than they love to win. And that was never me. Like I tried to fit that bill. I tried to make that me. I tried to take on kind of a Michael Jordan persona of, hating your opponents and trying to one up people. And that shoe just never fit. It never fit for me. And when I started to focus a lot more on trying to make people around me better, soccer actually became a game to play rather than a performance, not to try and screw up. So, so that was really big for me. Just starting to focus a little bit on daily. How do I want to grow? Weekly. How do I want to grow? And I started to see a lot more results come my way.
Well, and where did that shift start to happen? So, I remember reading Burn Your Goals for the first time, and I was coaching varsity boys basketball, and I read the book 3 times in a month. And it just I got it on Kindle. I had a paper copy, and I couldn't put it down. And every time I read it, I just kept underlining something new. And I was like, why? I kept asking myself, how have I missed this as a player and as a coach? Because I was losing the enjoyment
Right.
of of sport and coaching. Because I think my I need to burn my goals, for lack of a better word, right? And but so for you guys, you went through that as a player, and you started that shift in perspective started to happen, and then you wrote the book. Like, was that a gradual change in mindset and heart posture, or was it pretty immediate?
Yeah, 100%. It was very multifaceted, and I think this is, when I think about spiritual development, it's a journey. Personal development, it's a journey. And how many times have we relearned or readdressed things that we thought we had under control? The biggest thing for me was when I transferred from Vanderbilt to Memphis. I I had a guy on my team, Timothy Lonergan, who was a Christian. He was the hardest competitor I ever had as a teammate. We played the same position. And at the time, I grew up in a Christian household, but I wasn't living a lifestyle that was seeking to follow what Jesus was teaching at all. But I beat him out of our position uh, every year. But there was nobody on the team who was as kind to me and as helpful as a teammate as Timothy was. He had every reason to be mad at me for him not being on the field, but instead he would ask me to say, "Hey, I see some things from the side that could really help you." I'm like, "Why are you why are you trying to help me? I don't understand this." Well, um, long story short, Vanderbilt cut their program immediately, and I lost it. My whole identity was just shaken, and I called my mom. She didn't answer. Called my dad, and just bawling, said, "Hey, they cut the program," and he said, "Okay, we'll pray about it, and we'll figure out the right next thing." And it was like a lot of noise in my life just stopped, just like static was turned off. 2 days later, I transferred to University of Memphis, and I was at a school where nobody knew me, and I knew I wanted to make a change in my life, and I just knew straight away, like, however they perceive me or experience me these first 3 days is who they're going to think I've always been. And I gave my life, rededicated my life to Christ during that time, and I said, "Who do I want to be?" And I wanted to be like Tim. And Timothy Lonergan had discipled me for 2 years before I ever became a Christian. And so that was one thing that became really important. That was kind of the thing that maybe broke up the foundation and allowed for a new foundation to be set. Um, the other thing, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but when we were writing Burn Your Goals, I was actively in the process of trying to play professionally.
Mhm.
And I walked on. I literally just showed up at the Colorado Rapids, the MLS team in Colorado, and I cornered a coach and asked him if I could come train. It was there's a whole story behind all that of vulnerability and feeling stupid, and but he said yes, and I got to go train. And I was training with some kids who were 16. I was training with some guys who had already played in World Cups, guys who currently played for the U.S. national team, and I was the lowest of the level of the whole thing. And for 3 months, every day I went there. Every day after training, I would go to the golf course, and I was working as a cart guy, just cleaning golf balls and running carts and all that stuff. And I mean, every day I was getting kicked around, and I had no feedback from coaches at all. I The first couple of days, I was in the locker room. I'd say hi to players, and they just turn around and walk away from me, wouldn't say a word. It was extremely hard, and so I say all that to say it was a gradual process, because the growth that needed to happen, I needed to go through some hard stuff, and maybe once every 2 weeks, I would have this bit of growth where it was like, wow, I don't that surprised me, and it surprised everybody around me, and they kept me on there. But it wasn't this steep incline just going straight up. It was what Joshua talked about, the path to mastery. It was highs, lows, and very long plateaus. Um, and so, Joshua always talked about falling in love with the process of being great, and it's just a long journey. It's learning that there is going to be growth if you're doing the right things. You just don't know what it's going to look like, and you have no idea when it's coming. Um, and so there were a number of things that happened over 3 or 4 years where I kind of unlearned some of the ways that I used to think. I picked up new training processes, both for soccer and for just training myself in characteristic traits, and growing as a Christian as well. Um, so it wasn't anything. There was no aha moment, and I think it's probably um, one thing that I really disliked about what Joshua and I were doing, that we'd have so many people that said they had these aha moments, and they weren't expecting the long plateaus on the other side. And that growth was a process. And my challenge was, I would meet you, Shane, for a day, and you'd be on the top of the mountain. And then it was really hard to walk with you through the valley and through the plateaus.
Mhm.
And so doing the mental training stuff as a consultant was really challenging for me. Just knowing that a lot of people were going to be out in the wilderness and not have someone to walk alongside them.
Mm.
And so that's where, what I do now with youth coaching and what I do now every day in the classroom at our high school, man, I'm walking through it, and it's interesting. Yesterday was a day in the wilderness in my class. It was everybody was having a struggle, but just knowing like that's part of it, and you're okay with it. Um, you don't want to live there, you don't want to keep it there, but it's part of the progress. And so that's something I wish I would have known a lot more. And why I kind of hesitated a lot with writing books was it could sound a lot easier than it actually is. Um, and and that was really difficult for me. I wrestled with that for a long time, and talked to Joshua about it, doing Train to Be Clutch. But it was really cool. It was really difficult not to be in the trenches with people every single day.
Hey, it's Justin here. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, you know that I'm a coach, a husband, and a father to 3 busy kids. A couple years ago, one of our daughters was really struggling with her sleep and her breathing and crowding in her mouth. At that point in time, we started looking into things that could help her. And I'm proud to say that we came across a company called SaskMile. The team at SaskMile was incredible with our daughter in helping us figure out a solution for her health. The team at SaskMile made a real difference in her life, in her breathing, in the crowding in her mouth, and in her airways overall. My daughter's back to sleeping better, not grinding her teeth at night, and being able to just breathe, which goes a long way in her physical development. If you have a child that you're concerned about, whether they're snoring, mouth breathing, grinding their teeth at night, struggling with feeding, or just overall mouth development, take my advice. Reach out to saskmile.com. Their team there will offer consultations and incredible help for you. That's saskmile.com, saskmyo.com. I think Shane and I, and yourself now, the 3 of us all work with youth in a lot of ways, right? And Shane more so with young adults as a collegiate basketball coach. And currently I work with young male athletes and high school youth. And I think it's really important. We talk a lot at Prairie Hockey Academy that learning is really slow. That we talk about character as a skill, number 1. We say, number 2, learning is really slow, actually, and it requires a lot of failure, and it requires positive feedback from a coach or a mentor. And number 3 is our third pillar, and we talk is that growth is intentional, though. So it's really slow. It's frustratingly slow. We make mistakes still every day. But if we're not intentional every day when we show up to grow, it's like we're just going to be stuck in that plateau. So I think what you're stating, how, for our young athletes or anyone listening, even for parents of young athletes or anything, it's like expect highs and lows. The path to mastery, fall in love with the process. You're going to be putting in your time. You're going to be training. You might be getting your butt kicked around here for a while. And you might be thinking that I'm 6 months in, I should have caught up by now. You just may not have yet. That plateau just may be longer for you than somebody else, because we're not all made equal in our development as an athlete or our development in our character or anything, right? And so you're right. Walking alongside people in a true mentorship, discipleship type of way, so we can be through the wilderness with them, is really important.
Yeah.
And Jamie, I know that you chose to do some of that as you started breaking off and doing, some smaller mentorship groups where it was longer periods of times and, bi-weekly phone calls or anything. And I was a benefactor of that myself. And I think inside of that, you would see, if you were to walk through Prairie Hockey Academies, we built a 4,000 square foot, we call it the Champions Hall facility and dressing room. And it's beautiful. And our athletes get the benefit from it. And they walk through, and the first slogan on the wall, I think, is that, it talks about a heart first approach to leadership. And I just think, some of your fingerprints are inside of there, is what I would say. Is pieces like that. I think Heart's first approach to leadership came right from either Burn Your Goals or just the Train to Be Clutch thing, right?
Yeah.
I can digest. I mean, I can unpack that for people, but maybe as the individual that really gave that to me when we talk about Heart's first approach to leadership, and I talk to my coaches today and my staff about seeing the person and not the performance. And when we're coaching U9 girls or U14 boys, seeing that person, not the performance, has to be intentional as a coach. But tell me about that for yourself in your life.
Yeah, that was that full credit to Joshua on that one. That was something he stepped out, and in the mental training world, that wasn't really talking about somebody's heart isn't really it's not a clinical term. So it was really kind of interesting. He was a pioneer in saying that, and
Yeah.
but it was really much what you talked about seeing the person and not the performance, and just how rare that is. I can honestly say for coaches that I had coach me as a young kid or in college, even professionally, there's really only two coaches, and it wasn't all the time. It was just some bits and spurts where I really felt seen as a person, not as a player. Um, and looking at that now, like you said, the walking with people through the trenches. We just got to see our first freshman class graduate as seniors this last year, and to see how I almost said how long, but to see what that journey looks like in producing character and skill has been really, really amazing. But um, to hear from them how different their experience was with us as opposed to their experience with club teams that they played for throughout that time.
Mm-hmm.
And the joy that they had and the freedom that they felt like they had to go out and express themselves with the ball was probably one of the things that made the most impact on me. Was that there was just a freedom to be a person who plays soccer rather than a soccer player, and to be not be judged that way. And I know in what we do in the classroom, listening to educators for decades, share their back end experience of, if I could do it over again, here are the things that really matter. And the number one thing they talk about at our school is making sure that people are seen and valued. And, they come from all sorts of socioeconomic backgrounds, all sorts of things going on at home that you have no idea about. And how one interaction can change their life for good or for bad, just by seeing them. This is my second year teaching at the high school, and I'm blown away by how many people come back to my classroom door who had me last year. And people that I didn't even, some of my students from last year, their friends would come to class and drop them off. And I'd say, oh my gosh, Piper, who Crystal is? Amazing. And I'd start talking to Piper, and now Piper comes back to my class. And it's amazing how hungry people are just to have eye contact and hear their own name and know that somebody cares for them. In one way, it's really exciting because it's so simple to do.
Mm-hmm.
In another sense, it's really frustrating because it's not done enough. And I think that's where we have an opportunity to have great impact. And a lot of educators who've been teaching for years come to me and ask, what are you doing? Because I hear your name a lot. And I said, really, honestly, I just try to talk to the person that's in front of me. They're not a 10th grader. They're not a student. They're a person. And that's made a massive difference for a number of people, just hearing their own words coming back to me and their experience. So it's simple to do, and it's easy not to do.
You mentioned like that quote, fall in love with the process becoming great. Through all your life experiences now, how would you define greatness?
Shane, I was afraid you're going to ask me that question. So you had read Principal Circle, and I. So one of the things I was sharing with you guys, I started writing songs. I would say if there was a skill that I had and I really enjoyed, and I still do enjoy, it's wordsmithing. It's putting together words, reshaping words. I really enjoy that. Looking at the etymology of words, and I had a quote that hit me. I'm pretty certain I came up with it before I stopped the train to be clutch. But it was greatness isn't for the chosen few. It's greatness is for the few who choose. And so I started to try and unpack that again and again and again. And I'll be honest, there's some stuff in the Principal Circle when I read it now, I'm like, I don't even know what that guy's talking about. And defining greatness is one of them. And a big shift for me when I stepped away from train to be clutch was going back and throwing everything that I thought and everything that I taught and everything that I wrote up against the Bible and seeing, does it sound like David? Does the stuff that I was writing sound like some of the first century martyrs? Does it sound like stuff that's coming out of Scripture? And I'd gone back to greatness, and I can't tell you how many times I tried to make that shoe fit the word greatness, and it just doesn't show up in Scripture in the way I want it to. When it
Totally.
talks about greatness, it talks about big numbers or big in size, and the only real, worthwhile on topic explanation of greatness is the greatest among you is those who serve. And so when I think of greatness, I think about service. I think about serving other people. Um, and I made that really unclear in the principal circle. But now, like if I was to define greatness, I would say it's all about service. It's about what can you do for the betterment of not just the people next to you, but for the kingdom of God. And the shift that I wish I would have had was having a greater understanding of beating on my craft so that I can have the skill to set up a teammate. And I got to play for a semi-pro team here in Tulsa. I think I'm 6 years out now from playing, or 3 years out, but 6 years out from this moment. And one of the things that I had to wrestle with, I don't know if have you guys ever come across a player who has great ability, but they're afraid to do it because it actually puts other people down and makes them feel small.
No, not very often.
So this blew me away. Working with Train to Be Clutch, there were a number of players who it was almost like they were afraid to be great,
Okay.
because it made other people feel insecure, insignificant, and belittled. So Michael Phelps talked about how he became so superhuman in his ability that he didn't feel like he was human like other people, and it created this divide in relationships. Kind of
Hmm.
that similar thing, but just I can see the skill that you have, but you are choosing not to shoot the ball. Like it's come to you, everybody on the team wants you to shoot, but you're not shooting. So I had two moments like that. I had a moment when I was playing indoor soccer with the team, and somebody on the team said, "Why don't you just score? Like you know how to score. You're the best scoring option. Why don't you just score?" And I was thinking to myself, I was like, I don't think I'm the best scoring option. Um, but everybody else was clearly saying, no, you are the best scoring option. And as I unpacked that with a lot of other people, it was easier to see that for them, that they were afraid to really stretch themselves. Um, I started to kind of see that for myself. Well, I had an experience, and this goes back, Shane. Like this is the most mundane Tuesday morning practice at 8 a.m. at Union Soccer Complex that's covered in clovers. It doesn't even look like a soccer field. And I had this amazing experience. And I remember I got a ball. We were playing like a team scrimmage, and I got a ball, and I have a particular type of skill, particular type of move I can do without even thinking. And I did it, and the guy who was defending me fell over. And I brought the ball down, and just using all the skill that I have, the ability that I have with the outside of my right foot, I was able to find a guy, Nathan, who's become one of my best friends. And um, instead of trying to score myself or just doing something that was easy, I used everything that I had to set him up for a perfect volley. It was like a one. He was running in. It was like a one-time volley. He smashed it, and everybody went wild. And that connection piece there for me was really interesting because it changed the shift in my thinking where I wasn't beating on my craft to be the best. I wasn't beating on my craft to be a professional. I was beating on my craft so that I could have moments to set somebody else up for them to enjoy and the whole team to have great joy. And when I started playing like that, that was a different type of soccer. It wasn't about me. It was really about the team. And I hate to say it, as many teams as I was a captain of, um, I don't think I was that team oriented as I was in the last couple of years that I played. The last couple of years that I played, I was willing to do anything that my coaches said that would help our team be successful. And I just wanted guys to be set up. These were guys that were younger than me. They were trying to get into better colleges or trying to play pro. And I wanted to do whatever I could to make them better. And it was fun. It
Yeah.
was actual connection, and we had really good teams. And so go back to this heart first approach. That's where I actually felt like there was a connection of love between the people that I played with, where I really cared about them. So, um, I don't know how we got there, but the thing that I remember with that was, or greatness. We were talking about that. The thing that I remember was it allowed me to connect why I beat on my craft with a soccer ball to something that was worthwhile. Setting
Hmm.
Nathan up to have moments like that and potentially greater moments in his life was why I was beating on my craft. It's why I was working on juggling the ball. It's why I was watching video. It's why I was studying. It's why I was running 3 miles. Trying to increase my endurance. And that's just something I never heard,
You're
was
right.
that you could connect what you're doing to the service of other people.
And so I philosophically, I agree with you. I want to dig into this a little bit more and just talk about, how do we raise a generation of soccer players or leaders like this? Like, Dave King's a famous hockey coach here in Canada. He's been on this podcast before, and I was sitting beside him at a rink in watching a Prairie Hockey Academy game, and there's a youngster on the ice. He calls them youngsters. And he said that youngster there, number 10, he's a really good hockey player. And he said the tough part is youngsters like that don't understand what it takes to be great. And he said to go from being good to great, they have to know that it's actually about making their teammates better. And that makes them a great hockey player. And so when you ask me, have I seen anybody? I'm like, well, no, not really. Actually, oftentimes I see the opposite. I see this ego as your enemy type of individual who has to start to understand that in order to become great, they must make their teammates better. So I'm living in that zone in this world. And you're seeing athletes on the other side that's, it's being held back because they don't want to belittle or make somebody. And I guess what I'm saying is philosophically, can we get young athletes as coaches, U14, you're coaching a high level U14 soccer team, boys soccer with your son. Can we get them there, or does it require so much slow learning to be where we're like a veteran player and we're going, hey, I've actually scored enough, over my years, and now I just want to make you better because I'm, 30 and I've done this for a while. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Grit and Growth Podcast. We hope that you enjoyed today's guest and the answers that they were able to give and the stories they were able to tell. If you did enjoy today's episode, we'd ask that you would just follow or subscribe to our podcast. It does help us get the word out and our message. Thanks again. Have a great day.